Great. Well, welcome everybody to this third breakout session that we have. We're very pleased to have Gina Simm with us this afternoon to talk with us about care and counsel in co-housing. I'm told that Gina has been involved in a number of projects in the realm of open-hearted living. After a career in early childhood education, Gina published a book for parents and teachers called Heart to Heart: 3 Systems for Staying Connected, a manual for parents and teachers. Gina leads workshops about her book for parents and teachers. She also works with co-housing communities to assist in conflict restoration protocols. The principles of nonviolent communication are at the center of Gina's work, and I'm really looking forward to hearing that. Gina lives in a co-housing community in Massachusetts, where she's the leader of a committee called Care and Counsel. So with that, Gina, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So thank you so much. The name of my presentation is Care and Counsel in Co-housing, and the subtitle, Menu of Offerings to Keep Ourselves Connected, is there because in our little circle, we're a sociocratic community. The circle or committee that I am the leader of has this little booklet that we've created that we call a menu of offerings for people who are in conflict. So that's what that's about. This picture here, this collage of photos, I put together because I was looking. You know, we've been a community for like over 25 years. I don't even know how long it's been, maybe 27 at this point. And I went through just a bunch of pictures to see if I could find photos of people connecting and co-housing, to start with that for my presentation. And I set aside a bunch of them. Oh, this is good. This is good. And then I came across, I don't know, this is maybe 10 years ago, this shaving cream fight that we had in Pioneer Valley. And I was like, oh my God, look at this. I just tossed all the ones I had set aside because I couldn't believe how connecting this event was. We've done a few of these shaving cream fights. I wouldn't recommend the smell of shaving cream, or if you don't like, you know, having shaving cream on you. I certainly don't. You can see how I was sort of a minimal amount of shaving cream on me. But the faces are like, everybody really opens up in these kinds of fun activities. And you could be really mad at somebody, right? And suddenly you're in this shaving cream fight and it just kind of goes away. So that's why I included this photo. And then I tried to see if I could take the logo of our conference to superimpose it. And I didn't think it would work, but it was like, boom, right there. So I thought I would start with just the feeling of connection and why we're, you know, which is why we're in co-housing in the first place, right? But as I heard many of you say, or a few of you say, that the disconnection is inevitable. And it's a good thing to remember, like the keynote talking about that and thinking about conflict as something that's natural, so that to expect it. And I like what what is your role, and what is your name? I've already forgotten your name that introduced me.
I'm Stan.
Stan, yeah.
The room host.
I like what you yeah, you're your host. I like what you said, Stan, too, about it's just going to come along or something like that. You know, it's going to just roll in, you know, any second. So what I have included here is our vision statement in our co-housing community. I'm gonna go through it with you because it's long and wordy, and that's one of the downsides of our vision statement. But booklet of offerings, we start with our community vision statement. So we in Care and Counsel try to abide by our vision statement. So it's there as a reminder for us, and it's a reminder for the community that we are not going to forget it. So this is at the beginning of our little menu of offerings. And we didn't have a vision statement for many years. And suddenly we had these newcomers, you know, these new people, families move in that asked us, you know, like, why don't you have a vision statement? And so we put one together, and it's been really good. It was a good move on our part. So I'm going to read it to you the way it is intended to be spoken. We envision a thriving community in which we celebrate life's joys and give solace in times of sorrow. Strive to be the someone else who will do it as a gift of generosity to honor our neighbors and out of love for our planet. Seek to transform ourselves through the creative forces of conflict and forgiveness. Welcome differences as connecting bridges while respecting healthy boundaries. And share our physical, emotional, and spiritual resources in the spirit of the co in cohousing. And the reason why that needs to be read is because it's basically one sentence, and it's just a list of things that we want to align ourselves with. So yeah, that is there. And what I said to Stan is that I can pause at the end of every slide if you have any questions before we move on. And this might be a good time to do that, you know, and just feel free to either speak out or write something in the chat. He'll be paying attention to that. Okay. So if there's no questions at this point, I will just continue. So another thing we did when we first formed our circle was, because we had like a graphic artist amongst us in the circle, we created a logo. And that was just like no other circles in our community has a logo. And it's really great that we did this, because it also is just a reminder for us and for the community of what we, you know, sort of what we're about and what our components are. And narrowing it down to 3 is really good. So this is also on the cover of our booklet. And the booklet itself, you know, it says it's a living document. So we want to let people know that we're always changing this, not always changing it, but that it's open to being modified when needed. So that's another thing, is that just to remind people of our commitment to flexibility. So the heal, grow, and connect, and you can see the colors, you know, how they're all connected. So, you know, when you blend yellow and red, you get orange, and, you know, yellow and blue, you get green, and purple from red and blue. And that's just to point out that these all intersect. The healing part is kind of obvious. That just means, you know, if you're in conflict, of course, we want you to be able to heal, and, you know, you yourself want to be able to heal. Connection, of course, you know, as I said, that's why we're here. And if the connection gets broken, we want the reconnection to be able to happen. The growing refers to not only, you know, growing through the process of conflict resolution, but just our responsibility as a committee to educate our community about what's involved in being socially and emotionally autonomous. You know, so we do trainings and things like that. And on our full circle meetings, you know, that's when the community comes together as a whole. We and other circles have these things called academic minutes. And it's just a short amount of time where a circle will talk about what's going on in the circle, or something important that's happening in the circle, or sometimes they'll have a little game or something. And that's where we would throw something in, like for an academic minute, Karen Counsel might say something like, conflict happens, expect it, you know, and then put something up for somebody to put on the refrigerator, something like that. That would be a little academic minute. A training would take, you know, like a 45-minute section of the full circle, something like that. So any questions about that?
Gina, there was a question in the chat from Evelyn about going back to your question about the vision statement. and how that was actually created. Was that the Care and Counsel group that created it and brought it to the whole group for consent, or what was the process for that?
Yes, that's such a great question. It was actually created by the Vision Circle. So we have a little committee called the Vision Circle, which is a circle that I'm also on. And yeah, it took us 3 years to put this together, and we got a lot of input from the community, and then once we launched it, we had to unroll it. We spent a lot of time. We actually took each one of those segments on that list of things, however many there are, and did a whole activity around them, like imagining our community in 5 years and how it would fit into that kind of thing. So yeah, that's a very good question.
And then there was questions. I think some folks, you mentioned that Pioneer Valley is uses sociocracy. Can you talk just very briefly about circles as in terms of how that works and versus committees
yes.
and things, just in terms of that structure? I think there may be some questions around that.
Yeah. Oh, I see. I have to go like that. I'm just going to stop the share for a second so we can see everybody. Well, for many years, like 15 or even more, I don't know the exact number. We were a consensus community, and I don't know, somehow the whole idea of sociocracy got introduced, I think because other co-housing communities were were going from consensus to sociocracy. So that's how we got introduced to it. And it was it was a big thing to mull over, and it was a big thing it took a lot of time to decide if that's something we wanted to do. We definitely had conflict about it. But once we decided to adopt it, we formed these, more autonomous type committees where decisions get made within the committee, and creativity gets more, sort of condensed. And anyway, for most of us, it really was a breath of fresh air. And one of the biggest things that came from that was just more voices. Suddenly more people were involved in the community because of the structure that it offered. Way more people were involved, and way more attendance to meetings. So yeah, I hope that answers it.
So then there was a question around meeting as a full circle compared to those individual circles where a lot of the work gets done because they are basically given the authority and the power to make those decisions within their sphere of influence.
Yes. So once a month, we still have something that's called a full circle. And in those full circles, we're not really doing decision making. We have sometimes a focus of a particular circle at that meeting, or we have what's called a heart circle in those meetings, which are just venues for people to really connect, like really open up, like what is really going on for you. We just had one the other day focused on the vaccine, and so people got into small groups and talked about what was going for them in terms of the vaccine. Because it's controversial, and in our community, some people have been vaccinated because of their age and some haven't. And how does that impact opening up the common house? Should we wait until everybody's vaccinated, or are people going to feel left out? So a lot of controversy there and potential conflict. So we had a heart circle about that.
Okay. And then Deborah said she really liked your mission statement and wondered if you were going to be giving any more examples of an academic minute in terms of you'd given one as the conflict happens expected, if there were other kinds of examples.
Yes, I will keep that in mind as I go through my my presentation. I think I'll probably be able to come up with one. If I try right now, I won't. It'll be the same thing about like having to go downstairs, like my mind will go blank. All right, so should we move on? Okay, we'll go back to the screen share, and thank you so much, Stan, for paying attention to things. And let's see here. Where are we? Okay, so now we are in the flow chart. This is an example of an academic minute. Actually, I just created this flow chart for today, and I was like, "This is awesome! I got to share this," you know. And this would be something that I could do as an academic minute. Like, Care and Counsel has a flow chart for what happens when we get a call. So this is what happens. We have about 7 people in our circle. Somebody, and we have our own, Care and Counsel at cohousing.com in our listserv. So if somebody, usually our committee is receives an email saying, you wouldn't believe what's happening. This is not right. The shit is hitting the fan over here, and I need somebody to help me sort this out. I'm outraged. I don't want a mediation. I don't trust mediation. Like, I'm trying to give an example of somebody it really worked up in a state. That's usually when we get notified. If somebody's not in a state, they don't usually call on us, right? If they saw one of us walking down the path, they might, chat with us. But when for us to get a call is pretty serious. So we then respond, like the committee itself will talk and say, who wants to take this kind of a thing? And then the first thing we do is let that person know that we are willing to talk to them and listen to them, as soon as possible. And we arrange a time. And even in the email itself, or text message, whatever it is, we make sure that we are, that we really care about what's going on for them. And we've learned over time the power of what I call a gigantic listening ear. And if you look at the flow chart, the ear is really the biggest image here. And that's because it really is the biggest bang for your buck. Mostly of all the conflict we've had over time, most intervention from Care and Counsel ends after the listening ear, which is why, that line is there on the thumbs down when we say, would you like to look at our offerings? So the key to being a really strong and effective listening ear is really understanding the difference between what empathy actually is and what empathy actually is not. And we've done trainings on that. That wouldn't be an academic minute. And the thing about empathy that gets us in trouble is when someone is in distress and wants us to listen, what we tend to want to do is go to problem solving. And that sort of kills it. So that would be on the side of what empathy is not. Analyzing, interrogating, that's sort of a strong word, but just asking a lot of questions. And we tend to do that because we want to give ourselves something to do, because it's uncomfortable to just hear somebody vent. But basically, if you can train yourself to do that, and every once in a while say, wow, that sounds hard, you're going to get a lot of relief. And that's what happens. So after that, we say, would you like to have a look at our offerings? And if the answer is no, that's great. Then we stop. And, I say, thanks, this has been helpful. I'm good for now. And good for now means, it could be they call us back or they don't. And then if they say, yeah, then we say, okay, yeah. Let me know, take a look. Remember, you have to really remind them, like how to get into Google Docs, or I'll send you a link, or how about if we sit down and go through this together? A lot of people need a lot of hand holding, where to get into our document, even though it's been there. You know what I'm saying? It's it's funny that way. So let me get back to me, look through them, and let us know let me know what you think. And if they have expressed something, like, for example, they've said to me, this is like 7 different people involved in this problem. I would say, probably, I would suggest, after doing the listening ear, and if they've said yes to the offerings, I would probably say something like, since so many people are involved in this, when you do go through the offerings, pay close attention to restorative circles, because to me, since this is impacting so many people and restorative circles is really about the ripple effect, I would suggest you keep that in mind as your choice. So I'm about to share all the things in our offerings, and I'm going to be sharing the table of contents because we have a lot of things and I can't go through everything. But before I do that, are there any questions about this? And just let me know, Stan, if something comes up.
I think we're ready to move on. I'm really glad to hear that you're going to be sharing with us the table of contents, because that was going to be my question, was what all kinds of offerings do you have?
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. So you have this little booklet. Is this just distributed or given out when people have a conflict, or did they already know about the booklet and call you because of the booklet, or what happened? At what point do you give a person the booklet?
Theoretically, everybody knows about this booklet because we're always pushing it and we're always talking about it. But if you've never been in a serious conflict, you're not going to look at it. So you're not going to know. And now suddenly you're in conflict and you don't know what to do. And you're just so angry that all you want is somebody to agree with you. So that's when we say, oh, let us hold your hand so that we can get you into that booklet.
Okay. So the community has access to it.
Oh, yes. Everybody has access to it all the time. It's in our Google Drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But the Google Drive is its own conflict. Seriously, we've had conflict about the Google Drive in our community.
Well, you could print it. I mean, that's.
Oh, yes, we have a printed copy in our common house in our front room.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Clara. So the other thing that is in the booklet is this little message here that while Care and Counsel Circle loves to help, it is with the understanding that everyone is responsible for themselves. When we may not have the capacity to help resolve some situations, and we do not take on the role of therapists, nor do we make decisions. The make decisions really separates us from an adjudicatory body to a helping circle. A lot of, what happens when we get mad at somebody is we want a judge. We want somebody to get in there and tell that person that they're wrong and that they're going to go to hell. And so we have to make it clear that that's not what we do. Now, we do have something in our community life circle, which is our parent circle. Community life is the circle that holds everything that is not sort of brick and mortar in our or physical in our community. Like we have buildings and grounds, obviously, that's not going to be it. Common house circle, no. PALS, which is plants and land stewardship, no. But everything else, membership, fun, we have a fun circle, Care and Counsel, hub, which is what the work of the community, and there's more. Finances, all of that goes under community life. And so there is a place for, if Care and Counsel doesn't work, we have something called, we go to community life, and that circle does something called what is it called? It's sort of like it's like some sort of restoration process. We've only had to call on it one time for making decisions. And that was over a dog, because most conflict occurs around pets and parking. That's sort of a fact, I think, in co-housing communities. So, but it worked out. So yeah, so that's why we say, no decisions. Okay, here are our offerings. And I'm just gonna kind of give you a sense of each one. And then I'm gonna focus on one that we get a lot of use on, and that is the feedback form. Because when you think about it, giving and receiving feedback, it's hard to do, it's hard to give, it's hard to receive. And that's basically what we're trying to do when we're not happy with somebody, is give them feedback. And so I've created a form for it, and I'm going to share that with you. And we're going to really zoom in on that. So beginning anew is from Thich Nhat Hanh, and it is it's just a way to, I think I wrote this down. I guess I didn't. It's a way to be heard and to listen. And it has sort of a Buddhist template that's very nice. And somebody in the community knows how to do that. Now, we've had a couple of those, but we haven't used it that much. People have not chosen that. But when they do, we say, oh, you should go to Gracie, because she does beginning anew. Now, Gracie's not on Care and Counsel, but that's okay. So you don't have to be on Care and Counsel to facilitate any of these offerings, if you follow what I'm saying. Clearings. Clearings comes from the New Warrior Network, or the Mankind Project. And it's, if you've ever heard of that, it's something that's the format comes from that. And it's basically getting things off your chest. You're clearing something, and there's a format for that. That's never been tapped into. The person who was offering that to facilitate that doesn't even live here anymore. But so even if somebody did want to do that, we'd have to call Bill and see if he's willing to do that for us. Clearness is, I know that all these were clearness, but they are different. A clearness is when you want to make a decision about something. Like, say you're trying to figure out if you should move out of co-housing, and you're in conflict about it. And what you do is you sit in front of it's a Quaker tradition, actually. And you sit in front of a group of people, and there's a format for just being listened to and having that group help you make that decision by getting their input. A listening is like I described for the listening ear, but it's in a group. So you have a group of people listening to you, and therefore you're feeling heard, because the reason why you're upset is because you feel like people are not listening to you. So it doesn't have to be the people who you feel are not listening to you. It can be another group, and then you can often get your needs met by doing that. Mediation, people know. And then the facilitated conversation is another way to think about mediation. Mediation can be kind of a scary term. Sometimes people will say, I don't want a mediation, I just want a facilitated conversation. And it's really the same thing. But, it feels better. I get it. Nonviolent communication, NVC, that is usually just an empathy session. And the way that is conducted is we have a set of cards, a set of feelings cards, and a set of needs cards. The person in distress goes through all the feelings cards and just picks out the ones that are applying to the situation. And then the person who's listening listens to why they picked out those 4 cards. I'm furious, I'm sad, I'm stressed out, and I'm worried. Even though worried and stressed out are sort of nuanced and different, same thing, but a little different. And then they say why. And then the listener goes through the needs deck and picks out some needs that they are guessing are applying to those feelings. So I'm guessing that you really need some companionship here. You put down the companionship card. I'm guessing, from what you said about being so furious, that you need some autonomy. So you get the idea. Restorative circles, I touched on a little bit. That's also an NVC informed process, but it's really about people whose conflict is impacting a larger portion of the community. And
Gina,
that,
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead. If you finish that thought, I was just going to.
Yeah, it involves a lot of reflective listening. And you never know, if there's like 10 people, let's say, and you speak your truth, after you've spoken it, you call on somebody, but of those 10 people, you never know who that person is going to call on to reflect back to you. So it puts you in a position of really having to pay attention. That's one of the cool things I like about that process. Go ahead, Stan.
I noticed that you had jumped over helping hands. I wasn't sure whether you wanted to comment on, I think there were some questions about what all that included.
Yes.
Maybe you're going to get back to that.
No, thank you. I just drinking my wine too fast, I guess. Helping hands is for people who are like, they broke their leg or they're going to have a baby and they need meals and they need rides to the doctor's office, that kind of thing. But we have to be very clear about what our limits are in helping hands, particularly with, an aging community. We have a lot of people in our community that are, needing some support that involves more than what helping hands can do. So, yeah, that's something that we have in effect right now with like 3 different households are receiving help with helping hands. And we have a whole system for that sort of runs itself. We learned a lot over time. And you can have access to this booklet just by emailing me. I'll send it to you. Many co-housing communities have heard about it and have asked if they can just have a copy. And we've just said yes. So if that's what you're thinking, you will be able to do that. And all of these things are laid out in like a paragraph form about what each one is. Okay. The other thing is, I'm going to skip over giving feedback, is what's called the work. And maybe people have heard of that. So raise your hand if you've heard of Byron Katie and the work. Okay, good. So I would like to call on someone, if they feel comfortable, just giving us a quick summary about what that would do, why we would have that on our list. Just a volunteer.
The work is a series of a process by Byron Katie, who is not male, very fine woman, and it takes in pieces of, I'd say, cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's basically an approach to dealing with someone who is really in stress about something. And it could be, and she gives many examples in her books and also in her website, but it's a process of going through questions that that you answer, and in answering, you begin to reflect on whether your thoughts are actually accurate. So the first question is, what's the problem? And then the second question is it really true? is it really true? It's a standard question from cognitive therapy. And you go through this to the point, what would be, and then an important part of the process is sort of a reversal, which is what if you put yourself in the place of the other person with whom you're in conflict. And it's somewhat controversial, but it actually, if you're not dealing with people with serious really serious life issues, it can be very helpful in kind of getting yourself out of the place where you were by seeing one question is, why did the person you think was so bad, were they really bad? Can you prove that they were really bad? In other words, you kind of open your thoughts to ridicule, and by doing that, it loosens their hold on you.
Well put. Thank you. Yeah, it's referred to as an inquiry process, but you're inquiring about your own thinking. And she has these questions that you ask, and these things called turnarounds.
I call reversal, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's continue and getting to the meat of the matter here. All right. So, this is the feedback form. This is what it looks like. It's 3 parts. These little balloons at the top are just to kind of whet your appetite of, who you could give feedback to, a member of your family, a neighbor, the governance system, the care and counsel circle, the membership circle, etc. And it has, basically, you fill this out, what your experience is, what you appreciate about the person that you're in distress about, and what you were hoping for in the situation instead of what did happen. And I'll just go to the next slide. All right, so the purpose is to have a collaborative change. And it's different than a dumping session. So you're giving feedback. You're not, complaining about how bad they are. You're not blaming, which is, really easy to go into that space. Also, this is the front and back, ignore that. So there are various ways to do it. You could sit down and fill out this form by yourself as a way to just get some clarity on the situation. And you never give it to the person. You never sit down with them. I've had this experience at a co-housing conference that we had here in Pioneer Valley. And I went into the common house and took a chip. There was all these appetizers laid out. And I just took a chip and started eating it. And the person hosting got really upset with me for eating this chip. And I was like furious. I was just like, wait a second. And I ran home and just got really didn't know what to do. And then I remembered the feedback form that I actually created. And I sat down and filled it all out. And I felt so much better. So you can do it in writing and hand it to the person. In this case, I texted her and said, I just filled out a feedback form. Are you open to receiving it? And she said, yes, but not right now. Of course, it was the co-housing conference. And I said, okay, that's great. Just let me know. She said, put a blank one in my mailbox and I'll get back to you on Friday. I mean, she's so organized. And so I did. And so our exchange was completely in writing. We never spoke a word about this. I filled out mine. I put a blank one with it in her mailbox. She filled out hers. I got it back. And it was oh my God, seeing it from her point of view, really stepping into her shoes, it was no wonder she snapped at me like that. So the in-person thing is harder, which is why it's good that you have the choice of doing it in writing. The way it usually works with in-person is that you have it filled out and you don't hand it to them. You sort of you refer to it. It's sort of like a template for you to talk. And then some people want a third party there. You know, some people feel like they need, you know, like an advocate or a witness or something like that. So those are the 4 ways it can be used. And I know I haven't really said much about what goes in those 3 places, which is why I created this feedback prep sheet. So I'm just going to read this to you. I know that the words are really little, but this is a prep sheet that I give to people. And I actually worked with a co-housing community near Boston that was in such distress. There were 7 people that were upset with 1 person. This was a forming community. They hadn't even broken ground yet, and they were in such a state, they were just ready to throw up their hands. So they hired me to go through this with them, this process with them. And that's one of the reasons why I created the prep sheet, but I also met with them individually, and we went through this whole thing, and it was effective. I mean, they really felt better. It was like, you know, learn, heal, grow, totally. So I'm just going to go through this. My experience part is really, you're trying to give them the feeling of what it's like to be you. And so therefore, you're going to be using a lot of feelings words, right? So that's why the image there of the 4 faces. And you want to take ownership for your experience. The idea is based on the notion that no one causes our experiences, which is really hard to swallow, but hopefully you can get there. Someone may be the stimulus of our feelings, but not the cause. This is a time to reveal to the listener what it is like to be us. We all have different ways of experiencing stimulus based on who we are. I, for example, get triggered by things that my sister does not, and vice versa, even though we had a similar upbringing. One of my big triggers is volume and din. This comes from being a teacher. I might say to the class, I can't teach because you are all too noisy. You know, turn off the lights and say, I can't teach because you're all being too noisy. That would be an example of a blaming statement that's really hard to hear. In a more self-responsible way, I could say, turn off the lights and just say to everybody, I just want you all to know that what's going on for me right now is I'm starting to notice myself get stressed out. This happens to me when the sound is too loud, and it probably never happened to your kindergarten teacher. Maybe your kindergarten teacher had more of a tolerance for noise than I do, that kind of thing. So an easy to hear statement is likely to result in a lot of empathy for me. So when we can express our experiences with the frame of what we ourselves are bringing to the experience, it opens up the trust. So this part of the feedback form is the hardest part to do. But it can be done. And it's really a great feeling when you can achieve it. The second part, the appreciation, is the easiest part to do. And I put that not first. Everybody wants to know, why don't you start with the appreciation? And the reason is because, you know, when you know somebody's giving you feedback and you start with appreciation, you can't really focus because you're waiting for the axe to fall, right? So it's really nice after hearing the person's experience, especially if they've been self-responsible about it, to be able to hear the appreciation, because now it's soothing. This is a time when the listener can relax and feel self-assured that they have some self-worth. Mention big ideas supported by examples. For example, what I like about you is your ability to laugh at yourself. This is a quality that I admire because I tend to lack in it. Remember the time when you poured the wine into your salad bowl? But not only that, I've always envied your ability to speak so eloquently in a group. Just last week at Full Circle, blah, blah, blah. So you get the idea here. It's nice to give something deep and then follow it up with an example. So that's the appreciation part. And then the fun part is what I was hoping for. And that is basically your vision statement about the relationship or about the interaction. So think about a difficult experience and turn it around, like Byron Katie would do. And she even turned her name around. Her name is actually Katie Byron. This is a time to speak your vision of the kind of interaction or relationship you value. This could also be a time to express regret on your part. It's sort of another level, but it's still, I wanted to throw that in there. You don't have to do that, but it can really be very powerful. For example, I value a dissenting voice because it keeps us thinking critically. I was hoping for a kind-hearted exchange of debate that would expand our thinking and work together. I wish I had been more transparent about this vision early in our meetings together. I was questioning my leadership ability quite a bit, but was unable to get beyond my own triggers. This actually is this happened to me with somebody where there was somebody in my circle that was just, she had a dissenting voice, which was fine, but she was really, in my view, really disrespectful about how she did it. So style versus content. So that's what, we ended up having a mediation together, and she did not want a feedback form, but I really felt like in the end, because I was very clear about it, in the end, it healed our relationship. And I feel really good about her right now, in this moment. I mean, I have for years, but thinking about this person, I don't have any stuff, you know what I mean? So this is my my biggest takeaway for everybody today is the listening ear. And if you can't do anything and all you can do is this, you're going to get a lot of mileage is my point. And I just have my last slide, and then we can maybe take a little time for some questions. This is my book, Heart to Heart. That's what it looks like. If you go to my website, you can find out about my book and other things. I'd love to have a Facebook friend, a new Facebook friend. That's my email address. And then just some of the things I've done consulting wise, teaching NBC, helping circles like Care and Counsel get launched, parenting workshops. I did a thing on kids in co-housing for Coho US a year ago. And that is it. Just looked at the time, so my goodness.
Thank you, Gina.
So why don't we just start with our questions now, if you want to stay a couple more minutes. Clara? Oh, you're muted. You're still muted.
I'm always muted. Okay. Okay, my question. Back to earlier in the book about after you've gone through the book and I don't know, you tried a couple of things and you said it goes to the community life circle. What do they do with it at that point? Or what did they do with it?
They discuss it and they form what's called a resolution group. And
Okay.
it's 4 members of the community that we pick that would be good for that particular situation. 1 person from Care and Counsel, 1 person from Community Life, and 2 other people in the general community that, like in the dog issue, like a dog owner and a dog hater.
Like a jury kind of thing.
It's more like working with the 2 households, the person who had a barking dog and the house that was receiving the noise, and working with those two parties to come up with a resolution and, a timeline and that kind of thing. So it's not more like a jury, no.
Okay. But so is there an expectation that they, as you keep working with them, as with mediation, that they commit to it and they find a resolution and they commit to the resolution, like that kind of thing?
Yeah, and if
Okay.
they can't, then it becomes, like, what do you want to do? Like you weren't able to succeed in this.
Okay.
The rubber hits the road there.
Okay.
But we never got to that place, but we got really close to this one family considering moving out.
Steve, I think, yeah, you had a,
How big a community is Pioneer Valley? It sounds like there are a lot of people so that one person gets overloaded with all the possibilities.
It's
Hard to
32 households. It's pretty big, considered big. And it's like 100 people, including the kids.
think. Trying to see how in our community, people had a discussion group a couple of years ago about sociocracy, which I paid no attention to. And your presentation has made me think that maybe it's really something we could use, not to the level you have, because we're a smaller community, half the number of people. But I really appreciate it. This has really been an eye-opener for me. Thank you.
Oh, good.
Gina, one of the questions was whether if we write to you for the booklet, whether the form itself is a part of the booklet, or is that a separate?
No, it's part of it. It's in there.
It is linked in there, or it's a part of it. Good. Okay. Great.
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
All the different listening circles and such, is that the attendance of the circle, who the circle is made up of? Is that something that the person in struggle gets to pick, or is that like already decided, or how's that work?
Yeah. Oh, totally. Way better to have them pick it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Clara, I think you had another question.
I do, if there's time. It's not really a question, it's a comment. We have a compassionate connection circle at Treehouse Village, Cohousing, and we're working with your book, Gina, as you know, and the helping hands. It's interesting. We've had a fair bit of discussion around that, not about the usefulness of it, but about it being in the middle of or at the beginning of all of your other offerings that are about conflict resolution. And we came to the conclusion that it's really good in that spot because it kind of destigmatizes the whole thing about asking for help. So we're just leaving it right there.
Wow, thank you. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Deborah.
I'm sorry, Gina, I missed one thing when you were talking about like the 4 people that you would pick for this. Is that the listening circle?
No, that's what rarely has only happened one time in over 25 years. That's called a resolution group.
Oh, resolution group. Okay. And
Yeah.
how is that different from the listening circle?
We listened. We had a mediation. They went through the offerings. They wanted a mediation. They had one from a professional mediator in co-housing, and they were just getting, they were getting more and more upset. And so we felt like we exhausted.
Okay.
Yeah, we exhausted our abilities.
Okay. So what the listening circle was comprised of who? How many people?
We didn't have a listening circle. We had a listening ear, and then we had a mediation. But the resolution group was 4 people, a dog owner, a dog not liking dogs, afraid of dogs, somebody from Care and Counsel, and somebody from community.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I got all mixed up. I missed all the references. My mind probably went out somewhere. I was hoping that I could have some more contact with you at some point, because we're reconstituting, we call it our PET team, positive engagement team. And we help with conflict, but we also, our goal, because we're reconstituted this year during COVID of all things, to really create more connections in the community and build positive connections as a way, because it's obvious. But I would just love to have a little consult about that. And
sure.
I know you do consult work, so maybe we could talk about payment and stuff like that.
I would just say most of our connection here does not come from Care and Counsel. It comes from our fun circle.
Yeah. Well, we've done a lot of good things since COVID got, you know, I mean, we do a lot of potlucks and stuff and fun stuff. And we started doing, we've had one and we have another one scheduled. We started a talking circle.
Nice.
And first one we had was really successful. I don't know how the second one will go, but each person gets to talk from their heart and just be listened to. No crosstalk, no, you know, no arguing, no advice. And we have a stick, and the stick gets passed around.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you so much, Gina, for sharing with us.
Welcome.
Really
Thank
appreciated
you.
your time. Some really great information. And please do be in touch with Gina to follow up with her contact information there. And it sounds like some really terrific resources. So thank you so much, Gina.
Okay, bye everybody.